The alleged rioters who stormed the Capitol, apparently criminally, now has a new defense for his actions. He says Fox News basically made him do it. His lawyer pushing this for real in court with a phrase, Foxitis, telling a judge, quote, Fox television played constantly. He became hooked on what I call Foxitis or Fox mania and started believing what was being fed to him. Imagine believing things you hear from a channel that purports to provide news and facts. Well, the defendant's not actually the first rioter to blame conservative outlets for what they themselves did on January 6th. Talk about personal responsibility. But earlier this year, a militia leader said she was driven to storm the Capitol because of Donald Trump and right-wing media. So both her leader and his microphones. Meanwhile, this is not just something that's only coming from people trying to save their bacon in court. Look at the headlines from the son of Rupert Murdoch, who of course created the Fox News empire, who's blasted these kind of outlets that propagate lies and unleash insidious and uncontrollable forces. This is not a drill. This is not just a far-flung legal theory, whether or not it should be accepted by courts. We're dealing with perhaps an overdue reaction and awareness of what happens when you tell millions of people over and over things that, if true, would make them concerned. Like if it were true that someone was stealing the election, that democracy had ended, that would be a big deal. But it was precisely the opposite. Who believed that and who acted on it, whether it's a legal defense or not, speaks to the damage and the risk out there. So with that in mind, just take a look, if you don't happen to watch all that stuff over there all the time, at the kind of lies that they're referencing on Fox News. And this was specifically in the weeks and months leading up to the insurrection.
If we don't fight on January 6th on the floor of the Senate and the House, that is the joint meeting of Congress, on these electors, we're done.
Some of the most brazen acts of voter fraud to date. How dare you ask why dead people are voting?
They don't really care whether the election was stolen or not.
An intel source telling me that President Trump did, in fact, win the election.
President Trump did, in fact, win the election. False claims over and over, hour by hour. There's a study by one watchdog group that found Fox cast doubt on the results about 800 times in just 2 weeks after the election, that critical period when people are trying to understand whether they like the outcome or not, what really happened. Now, as a lawyer, I can tell you that you can't just make up words and tell a judge that's why your client's not responsible for what would otherwise be a crime. Foxitis as a legal defense may not get very far. But Foxitis as something in our culture might be worth tracking. The Washington Post recently reported on studies showing that Fox misinformation may have made the COVID pandemic worse, specifically for the people who watch Fox, by providing unsafe behaviors among its own viewers who, like many news viewers, do tend towards older age. Another study from last year has Fox programming was found to be more likely to use the word hate than other news outlets, which affects our cultural communications, to be sure. Or all the way back to 2012, the study found Fox viewers were just less informed than people who didn't watch any news at all. No shade, and we all have to work hard in the news. Nobody's perfect, but I got to tell you, if that's where your viewers end up, you might not be doing it right. There is clearly a problem. And I want to be very specific about part of what I just mentioned. This is not just about politics. We reported on the time about some of the COVID misinformation, which was bad for Fox viewers who overwhelmingly vote Republican. Who cares who they vote for? I will tell you, we are critical of people putting out misinformation that's dangerous to whomever. In that case, dangerous to their own consumer base. Now, we don't expect Foxitis to take over the courts. But the fact that it even wound up in a courtroom for the same reason that experts have warned about that misinformation for years is why some of this matters. Many people do believe what they hear, especially if it comes through, this seemingly important TV box. But I want to leave you with some bars by the late Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who said something that applies to this and will keep applying in this troubled era that we are living through. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from Right Here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.
Is your cleanser doing enough for your sensitive skin? See Cetaphil Gentle Skin Cleanser defends against 5 signs of skin sensitivity and actively hydrates as it cleanses. Cetaphil, dermatologist recommended complete care for your sensitive skin.